Hey guys, what's up? I am going to be giving a few thoughts, a few impressions on this guy right here, the BenQ TK800M. This review is not going to be as thorough and comprehensive as the HT3550. The HT3550 represented a new path forward for 4K projection relative to its predecessor, the HT2550. The TK800M is more of an iterative upgrade relative to last year's TK800. And we'll dive into what's different, what's improved, and maybe what's not so much improved. So a little bit of context. Last year, HT2550 came out from BenQ last January. And I think that it had a few challenges, but for the most part, it represented a great value. And it was the first 4K projector announced for less than $1,500. And then that kind of let the floodgates go for 4K projection. And I think that no less than 25 models or more were launched or released last year from various manufacturers as far as 4K projectors go. And so I reviewed last year the Epson 4000, the BenQ HT2550, the BenQ TK800. What I really liked about the BenQs is that they offered the 8.3 million pixels on screen, really good color accuracy. The HT2550 had 96% Rec 709 coverage. TK800 had 92% Rec 709 coverage. And so fast forward to today, even in the last few months, we've seen huge leaps with 4K projection technology. We've got the HT3550, among the best 4K value in the market that I see right now with its auto HDR tone mapping, 8.3 million pixels on screen. BenQ's HT5550, which ups the game even more with 100% DCI-P3 color space coverage. I'm also reviewing the Epson 5050 UB, and so you get a lot of brightness there. You get a lot of really great color with that unit as well, and contrast and black levels. Where this TK800M fits among all of them is living room setups with high ambient light, people who are on a budget, and maybe this is not and maybe not in this order, as well as people who enjoy to game in 4K in HDR on a true 8.3 million pixel projector. This is your guy. So let's kind of go through it. So last year's TK800, a lot of people really didn't enjoy the light border that it had. This guy gets rid of it. This is the second projector that has launched using the new DLP chip. And so there's only two projectors on the market right now that do not have the dreaded gray border, the HT3550 and the BenQ TK800M. So it uses the new chip, it gets rid of the gray border. The second thing that's updated on this relative to the TK800 is it's rocking a new lens. So last year on the TK800, the focus uniformity was a little bit hit or miss depending on the model. My production sample unit that I had wasn't great. However, a follow-up unit that BenQ sent me to test was razor sharp and perfect. So the new lens that this uses, it's interesting, the amount of play that the focus has is insane, as well as the zoom. It's much, much easier to lock in zoom as well as focus. Now, with that being said, a slight drawback as it relates to the lens assembly. So benefit it being very sharp. This is the sharpest 4K projector that I've seen. You can literally see individual 4K pixels on the screen on a $12.99 projector. That's awesome. This is sharper than the BenQ HT5550 that I'm currently reviewing right there. This is like, if you get your nose to the screen and look for pixels, this is sharper. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it is a better overall projector. It does things better, like gaming. We'll get into that in a second. But with that being said, this is a very, very sharp 8.3 million pixel on-screen projector. Very easy to lock that focus in and get a sharp image. So the lens assembly is great. The zoom has shrunk from a 1.2 times zoom on the BenQ TK800 to a 1.1 times zoom on the TK800M. So what that means, and this is a slight concern for some, you know, I wasn't affected by this because I have the throw ratio on the setup to absorb that extra zoom, or I guess the lack thereof. But this throws a 100-inch image at 11 feet. So just beware of that as you are selecting this projector. You have to project, this is going to be a projector you need to set a little bit further back from the screen than you're probably used to. But if you have the setup for it, I think this is a great projector. So let's talk a little bit about where this fits in relative to HT3550, HT5550, Epson 5050 UB, did I already say HT3550? I think I did. So there are a few other projectors I'm reviewing right now, and this still fits in very, very nicely with those other projectors. And where this fits in is, like I said before, HDR gaming, as well as environments with ambient light. So on the box it says vivid living room entertainment. So if you have a living room setup where you want this guy to be set up, you know, I think that this is going to be great for a situation like that. If you have the throw and placement flexibility set up to absorb that reduced zoom. It's very, very bright. And so coming from a month with the HT3550, I put over 100 hours on the HT3550. I set this guy up and it just kind of brought me back to why I use the TK800 for 8 months. And it's just a bright, good looking projector. Now the TK800 had 92% Rec 709 coverage. And again, like I said before, the HT2550 had 96% Rec 709 coverage. BenQ's ad campaign last year was 4K or 4K. You know, would you want a more color accurate 4K projector, 96% Rec 709 projector for a darkroom setup with the HT2550, or would you want a brighter, maybe a little bit less color accurate projector with the TK800, but you know, like I said, brighter, poppier, more vivid? Well, it seems to me like the TK800M is kind of having its cake and eating it too. This rates and claims 96% Rec 709 coverage, and I can say that up on my screen, the colors look great. The new lens, I think, has increased the perceived contrast. The new DLP chip, where that extra light isn't bouncing around anymore on your screen in your room, that's helping with contrast a little bit. So I'm just going to run down how this performs relative to those peers. HDR. HDR looks great. So there's two parts of the HDR I want to talk about. First and foremost is the watching movies and film. So coming from the HT3550, I think that the HT3550 and the way it does auto tone mapping and the brightness of the HDR image on the HT3550 actually exceeds that of the TK800M, because the TK800M does not do the auto tone mapping that the HT3550 does. And so for film, so this still puts those extra lumens to use. That's not what I'm saying here. As you recall in the TK800 review, the extra lumens were actually really, really good for HDR. The HT3550 was just so good at HDR. So the HT3550, I would definitely pick over this unit as it relates to if you were like a film junkie movie buff who's wanting to get the very most color accurate image. Now, when it came to HDR gaming, that was a little bit different story. Now, to level the playing field, both the HT3550 as well as TK800M do 18 gigabits per second HDMI. They have that 18 gigabits per second full HDMI 2.0 chipset, which allows 4K gaming in HDR at 60 frames per second. So if you have an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro, this will give you that full experience. So the HT3550 did that, the TK800M did that, the TK800 last year even did that. Now, where this performed very well is it leveraged the extra lumens as it related to the on-screen gaming performance. I don't know why, but the auto tone mapping performance of the HT3550 didn't really translate one-to-one with gaming. And so you have the games like Forza Horizon 4 or Halo Master Chief Collection. These HDR games have their own in-game HDR settings that you can adjust and calibrate. and the extra lumens of the BenQ TK800M really shown here. Not only that, but with my Leo Bodnar device, I was measuring on the HT3550 about 58 to 63 milliseconds of input lag. Interestingly, some reviewers are even getting up to 70 milliseconds of input lag on the HT3550. But like I said, I was getting as low as 58 milliseconds on that unit. With the TK800M, I'm getting anywhere from 42 to 43 milliseconds of input lag. So the quicker input lag, the higher brightness, the sharper image on the TK800M led to a better overall 4K HDR gaming experience. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more about where the TK800M fits within the 4K gaming projector space. The TK800M has a lot going for it that a lot of other projectors just can't compete with. If you're looking for a 4K, true 4K projector that can display 8.3 million pixels on screen in HDR at 60 frames per second with its 18 gigabits per second HDMI chipset, I can't think of another projector that can do all of that with less than 43 milliseconds of input lag and display pretty darn good color to boot. As well, this is the only DLP projector really that's going to be good at gaming that doesn't have that gray border that we had last year. There are a couple other projectors I would consider. I mean, if you're looking for less than $1,000 and you don't care about 4K, I mean, probably shouldn't be looking at this review if that's the case, but Optima has a 1080p unit that accepts a 4K signal and can display HDR. It's only displaying 2 million pixels on screen. And so if you are looking again for that true 4K experience, that's not going to fit that bill, but if you are on a budget, that might work for you. Epson has a couple below, the Epson 4000 I think is on sale for less than $1,500, but it actually has pretty good input lag, I believe around 33 milliseconds, so about 9 milliseconds quicker input lag than this unit. However, it only has the 10 gigabits per second, so it's not going to be able to do 4K HDR at at 60 frames. It's only going to be able to do that at 30 frames per second. You know, as you get up into the $2,000 to $3,000 range, Epson has their new 5050 UB. It has about 28 milliseconds of input lag. It's the very first Epson that has that 18 gigabits per second. The only thing that kind of is a little bit of a niggle, a little bit of a kink with this projector is the fact that the zoom shrunk to 1.1 times on a unit that already didn't have fantastic placement flexibility. But if you can make the placement work, this is a fantastic HDR gaming projector. Or, you know, for sports, this is really, really good with sports. I had the predecessor up on my ceiling as my primary projector, excuse the dust, a little bit of construction here, for 8 months. And this builds upon this, the TK800, and no more gray border. Now, a couple things that I would call out as a room for improvement, and I didn't notice this on the TK800, but I would say a room for improvement on the TK800M. As I got really, really close to the screen, I was doing some test patterns. I noticed some bouncing light around the primary image that was caused from the inside of this lens assembly. You can see there it's pretty recessed, and so there's a lot of light bouncing around, and it's a fairly reflective material. And so the light bounced around quite a bit. What I would recommend doing, you can go on and get for like $10 some screen flocking material and telescope flocking material, you know, whatever you want. It's black velour velvet tape, and you can just line this inner ring with black velvet tape, and that would solve it. And I think that would actually increase the contrast. I did a similar solution to that. I actually taped over the lens assembly and made a cutout for the picture. I wouldn't recommend that, but it worked pretty well. Yeah, and so I would say that the light leakage on this from that internal lens ring could be improved. But overall, I mean, I think that it's a very handsome unit. Let's do a quick hardware tour. So on this unit, there is not any lens shift, which, you know, I complained about last year on the TK800, but if you can make it work, it's great. It does have auto keystone. Here's the focus. Now, I got mixed up just a little bit when I put this on my ceiling. I thought, and I reported to BenQ, I thought the focus, because the focus is so big, I was working in the yard, don't knock me on my fingernails, but the focus actually makes the picture bigger than the zoom did. And they said that the reason why that they did that is to make focusing it very, very easy. And so the focus range is huge. And then the zoom is right here. Standard BenQ buttons. And on the back, this is going to be identical to last year. Audio in, out, HDMI 1, 2, standard 12-volt trigger. And you can also power like a Roku streaming stick or a Fire TV stick using that USB Type A port as well. So there you go. A few things that also were improved. Not only was the lens improved, not only was the DLP chip improved, which got rid of the gray border, but the firmware updates from the TK800 that I did not see, as I didn't send my unit in to get updated, but they did a lot of improvements with the firmware around auto tone mapping. 3D on this projector is really good. You know, the green tint from last year is not as pronounced. It's still, you know, there, but you can adjust that and calibrate it out if needs be. You put glasses on. I don't notice it with glasses on. 3D is very good on this projector. But one thing that's good with 3D on the TK800M is 3D, there's a few different types of 3D material that's now automatically picked up on when it can detect that 3D content. So you pop in a 3D Blu-ray and it's going to automatically detect that, throw it into 3D mode, put on your glasses, you're good to go. If you wanted to go in and, you know, view your own side-by-side or top and bottom content, you can just make that adjustment real quick. Last year, it was a little bit difficult to throw it into 3D mode. You could do it, but from what I've seen, just make sure that your source material is 1080p. So if you're working on like a Shield TV, trying to play 3D files from your Plex library, make sure that the Shield TV is in 1080p mode already. And so you'll have to change the display source for it to recognize 3D. So just kind of an FYI. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, and this is just me pointing my camera at a projector and talking for 10 to 15 minutes. Apologies, but, you know, I gotta say, my conclusion on the BenQ TK800M, it is a fantastic 4K HDR, like all-rounder gaming, living room, sports, movie projector. So if you can make the placement work, I think that this is a fantastic value. Get rid of the gray border. The lens is the sharpest 4K image I've seen. It's sharper than the HT3550. It's sharper than the Epson 5050 UV. It's sharper than the HT5550. It's sharper than the TK800, the HT2550, the Epson 4000. Every 4K projector that's been through my theater, this is the sharpest, most easily focused 4K projector I've seen. With that being said, if you are focused purely on movies and you really prioritize that HDR look, that auto tone mapping that the HT3550 can provide, the TK800M, it does good HDR, but it just can't match the HT3550's performance with its dynamic iris, auto tone mapping, and the wide color gamut filter. Let me summarize it this way. BenQ has put their sharpest 4K image and their fastest input lag on a projector that is being marketed as their value 4K unit. Does it have the best color in their lineup? No, it doesn't, but it's actually pretty darn good. It has the color of what they were marketing as their color accurate 4K projector last year with the HT2550. Not too shabby. It has the sharpest 4K image that I've seen of a 4K projector that has been in my theater, including the Epson 4000, HT2550, TK800, HT3550, HT5550, and the Epson 5050 UB. The TK800M resolves the finest details on an 8.3 million pixel image that I've seen using their new lens and focus assembly. I just find it interesting that they put that on their budget, or air quotes, budget projector. So I'm gonna call it a wrap here. Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, feedback. Again, this is not going to be the thorough, comprehensive video, but I wanted to not delay any further and let you guys know what my thoughts and impressions were with this TK800M. Let me know what you think.